This is Under Review, the show that talks about Colorado sports with a sprinkling of national sports stories as well. I'm Jordan Long. The Broncos hit their bye week at 3-5, 3 wins and 5 losses. They are currently tied with the Las Vegas Raiders for last place in the AFC West Division. If you look at the Broncos season as a whole, they could easily be 5-3 or 4-4, which would have been 500. 2 of their losses were 3 points or less. Week 1, a 1-point loss to the Raiders. Week 2, a 2-point defeat at the hands of the Washington Commanders. Really, that Washington game should have been a victory. The Broncos were ahead in this game 21-3 with 9 minutes left in the second quarter. I thought it was going to be a victory. The Broncos took their foot off of the gas. And Washington outscored Denver from that point 32-12. As Denver lost the game 35-33. Now, the worst game of the season, and this is one you might remember, was Week 3 against Miami. Miami put up 70 points. Now, if you examine that game even closer, the Broncos were without their leader on defense, Justin Simmons. Now, would it have been any different? Who knows? Would they have given up 70 points? Who knows? Either way, Miami scored 70 points. They could have broken the all-time scoring record, but decided not to. That was the bad so far this year. Let's look at the good. The Broncos' first victory of the season came against the Chicago Bears. Denver was behind in this game as many as 21 points. The score stood 28-7 with 4 minutes and 11 seconds left in the third quarter. I thought this game was over, but Denver said no. Denver outscored the Chicago Bears 24-0 the rest of the way to escape with a 31-28 victory. The best win on the schedule came last week against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Kansas City had won 16 straight in this rivalry. The last win for Denver in the series came in Week 2 of the 2015 season. That's also when Denver won Super Bowl 50. Kansas City dominated this series, but if you really look at it, 8 games during this winning streak for Kansas City were won by one possession. Week 12 of the 2016 season even went into overtime where Kansas City escaped with a 30-27 win. That game, their kicker, the Kansas City kicker, just before the end of overtime, hit a field goal that hit off the upright and went in. If not, it would have been tied at 27. The Broncos, though, looked great last week. They kept Patrick Mahomes and that offense from scoring a touchdown. That's hard to do. They say Mahomes had the flu, but who cares? Even so, it was one of the worst performances of the year by Patrick Mahomes. He was 22 of 38 passing for 240 yards and 2 interceptions and 0 touchdowns. The Broncos blitzed him all game and made sure they had a spy so he couldn't even run outside the pocket. The Broncos in that game actually played a complete game on offense and defense. So the Broncos hit the bye week at 3 wins and 5 losses, which isn't so. Let's dive into the numbers even more at the Broncos bye week. The defense is last in the league when it comes to total yards and rush defense. They give up 405.9 yards per game, and they can't stop the running game as opponents run for 154.1 yards per game. Now, Denver is 27th in the league when it comes to defending the pass, permitting 251.8 yards per game. Scoring-wise, Denver is allowing 28.3 points per game, 29th in the league. Now, a lot of this comes from Week 3 when they play Miami. What do I mean by that? Well, the Dolphins gained 726 yards of total offense that day. 376 came through the air, and 350 on the ground. They also gave up 70 points. Really, though, the defense has improved from Week 3. Offensively, they are 22nd in total offense, getting 302.1 yards per game. The Broncos average 185.4 passing yards per game, 28th in the NFL. When it comes to running the football, and this is where they are great, they are 12th in the NFL, averaging 116.8 yards per game. Points-wise, they scored 21.5 points per game, 16th in the NFL. The offense is looking pretty good. When they come back from the bye week, their red zone scoring needs to improve on offense. When they drive into the red zone, They only score a touchdown on 53.57% of the time they drive into the red zone, I should say. So you're looking getting into the red zone at 53.57% of the time. That isn't going to cut it. You have to score more touchdowns. Another area that they need to improve on is third downs. They still have a difficult time converting at 40.2% of their third downs. That means most of their drives when they face a third down, they're stopped and either have to punt or they have to kick a field goal. Denver has a lot to improve on, but 3-5 isn't the worst record right now. After their bye week, they will head to Buffalo to take on the Bills on Monday Night Football. Denver knows there's a lot of work to be done if they want to end their playoff drought, but 3-5 isn't bad at their bye week. We're going to move on to the Las Vegas Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders face the New York Giants this week. Now, the news should have been the Raiders taking on the Giants. Well, that isn't the case. The Raiders decided to pull the plug on Josh McDaniels as head coach. This was Josh McDaniels' second chance at being a full-time head coach. His first was in Denver, which lasted only 28 games. It wasn't very pretty. Denver started with him in 2009, and they were actually 6-0. That was great. I was head over heels when that happened because I was like, oh, playoffs, we're 6-0. Then again, they went 5-17 the rest of the way. His record with Denver was 11-17, a winning percentage of .393. Now, Josh McDaniels had a chance to be the Colts head coach, even agreed to be their head coach on February 6th, 2018. So he could have been the Colts head coach. Well, that didn't happen because he said no. The same day he had a change of heart and went back to New England as the offensive coordinator. That gives you a glimpse of his coaching career by taking the Raiders' job. Now, the Raiders gave him a real chance to be a head coach. The reason why I say that is because Denver gave him full control of being a general manager, which was a stupid idea. But in Las Vegas, I should say, he wasn't going to have full control of personnel moves like he did in Denver. Last year, the Raiders went 6-11 in his first year. A lot of teams struggle with a new head coach. It takes a while to understand the system they want to run. Basically, even if you're an offensive coordinator who takes the job as a head coach or a defensive coordinator that takes the head coaching job in the NFL, it still takes 3 seasons to get the system down. I know every team wants to be successful right away, but that doesn't happen. In the offseason, this past offseason, the Raiders moved on from quarterback Derek Carr. Carr landed in New Orleans. The Saints are 4-4 and maybe should have kept Derek Carr as they are tied with the Atlanta Falcons for first place in the NFC South Division. Looking at that, the Raiders should have kept Carr, but hey, things happened and they moved on. The Raiders, though, signed Jimmy Garoppolo, I should say. So Jimmy Garoppolo was signed by the Raiders because he was a familiar name and face with Josh McDaniels' system. Garoppolo was in New England from 2014 to 2016 as the backup to Tom Brady. Josh McDaniels was the offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. Looking at this year, the Raiders are 3-5. That's not bad, but not great either. They're tied with the Denver Broncos for last place in the AFC West Division. The only reason why, Las Vegas, I should get confused with Oakland where they last played, but Las Vegas, I should say. The reason why Las Vegas is higher than Denver is because the Raiders are 1-1 in the AFC West Division and 2-3 against AFC opponents. Denver is 1-2 against AFC West opponents and 1-4 when they face AFC opponents. Anyway, the Raiders knew it was time to let go of Josh McDaniels. I was surprised it came so early. The Raiders technically are still in a playoff race in the AFC. They aren't out of it. The Raiders decided it was best to move on. The locker room was never great with Josh McDaniels, and he even butted heads with star wide receiver Davante Adams. It just never seemed McDaniels was the right man for the job. McDaniels leaves the Raiders with a record of 9 wins and 16 losses, a winning percentage of .360. The Raiders will move forward with Antonio Pierce as the interim head coach. He has been the linebackers coach. Now, depending on the job Antonio Pierce does, it is possible he could land the job permanently. He has the remaining 9 games to show owner Mark Davis he can handle the job. If he coaches well, then maybe Antonio Pierce will be in consideration for the job. The Raiders, though, no matter what, will start a coaching search at the end of the year. So even if Antonio Pierce gets them to the playoffs, that could lend him some consideration to get the job. But either way, the Raiders will start a coaching search at the end of the year. On to my NFL picks of the week. Now, last week I went 4-1. We're going to start with the Miami Dolphins versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City is a 1.5-point favorite. This game is going to be played in Germany, so really no home field advantage for either team. This may be a high-scoring game because both offenses can score. In the end, Kansas City wins because it will be a one-score game, and I just think I would pick their offense and defense over Miami's defense. Miami has a great offense, but I think Kansas City's defense is better. Seattle versus Baltimore. Baltimore is a 6-point favorite. The thing I look for in this game is whether can Seattle's defense stop Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson. Lamar, as we know, is a threat to run it, and he can pass it as well. For Seattle, though, can their offense score touchdowns? You cannot settle for field goals if you're the Seattle offense. That is how you're going to stay in the game, is to score touchdowns. I think it will be too much. I think, honestly, it'll be too much Lamar Jackson, and that Baltimore gets the win. Dallas versus Philadelphia. The Eagles are a 3-point favorite. With these two rivals, this is a great rivalry, and you never know how this game is going to go. I actually expect a close game, but the Eagles winning it. The Buffalo Bills versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati is a 2-point favorite. This should be a close game throughout. The Bengals find a way to win this football game, so give me Cincinnati. Minnesota versus Atlanta. Atlanta is a 3.5-point favorite. Atlanta, in my mind, is the better team, and they run away with this game. So my picks again, Miami versus Kansas City in Germany. Seattle versus Baltimore, I'm taking the Baltimore Ravens. Dallas versus Philadelphia. The Buffalo Bills versus the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm going Cincinnati. Minnesota versus Atlanta, the Atlanta Falcons. I'm Jordan Long. Thank you for watching this edition of Under Review. Follow me on Twitter at SportsScoop1 or X or whatever it's called. But if you follow me, it's at SportsScoop1 if you want to follow me. Read my blog that I write Mondays through Thursdays at sports-scoop.com. Thank you for watching this edition of Under Review. Have a great day and week, and I'll catch you next time here on Under Review.